Now read a second time. Call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, the member for Watson has certainly put on some theatre, full of symbolism and absolutely lacking substance. Clearly, the member himself must not have spent any time in a foreign market, struggling to catch a bus, a train, look up a timetable, find a doctor. I have. I've spent years doing just that in non-English speaking countries where there is not one English sign. The English proficiency requirements outlaid in this bill have two streams, a study stream and a general stream. So when the Leader of the Opposition and when the member for Watson carries on about there being a need for university-level proficiency, that is a dishonesty. It is wrong. And the very people that they therefore purport to represent are the ones in whose hearts they are driving fear. We are an open political economy in Australia. We welcome people to this country. And what we do not need is the Labor Party misrepresenting responsible legislation, driving fear into those people who we should be welcoming here to Australia. It is their words to suggest university-level proficiency. There is no such thing required. No such thing. Which makes one wonder, Deputy Speaker, the increasing importance it is for Australians to decide whether the blind negativity, the opposition for opposition's sake that comes from Labor on virtually every government bill is simply willful, destructive obstructionism, or whether it comes from an entrenched hypocrisy that has become the hallmark of today's Labor Party. Australians should consider and make a decision on that question as they listen to the member for Watson and Labor debate bills in this parliament in the lead-up to the next election. Because if they do, they will perceive the extent to which the Australian Labor Party is not only bereft of solutions, but more importantly, totally unworthy of their support. The Australian Labor Party, once a great and worthy part of our polity, has shown repeatedly that its aim is to make this country ungovernable, because it perceives in that behaviour the creation of a disenchantment that will grease its way back into office. This is a despicable approach to governance in this country, and is on display again, yet again, in Labor's response to the bill we're debating today to strengthen, by amending, the Australian citizenship legislation. All elements of this bill have broad support outside the soft left that now dominates Labor, and outside the hard left, which has otherwise deserted the Labor Party for the Greens, and which Labor now desperately wants to claw back by relentlessly sliding further and further to the left. This bill establishes a considerable yet totally reasonable English language test for would-be Australian citizens, a test closely in line with similar tests in countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, using precisely the same template, the International English Language Testing System. In all the criticisms from the member for Watson, he wasn't able to suggest any other template. No proposal, just blind criticism. The bill extends the amount of time new arrivals must legally reside in this country before they can apply for citizenship from 1 year to 4. It requires applicants sign an Australian values statement. It requires that applicants demonstrate an ability to integrate into the Australian community, including by behaving in a manner consistent with Australian values reflected in the Australian values statement. It requires applicants to pledge their allegiance to Australia. their fellow Australians and Australian values, and allows the minister to determine eligibility criteria for sitting the citizenship test that may consider the fact that a person has previously failed the test or did not comply with one or more of the rules related to the test, or if he or she cheated. It also enables the minister, in certain circumstances, to overrule decisions made by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, an extension of his authority made necessary by the fact that the tribunal has determined people to be of good character, even after they have been convicted of child sexual offences, manslaughter, people smuggling and domestic violence. Extraordinary decisions. Labor opposes all of these steps, despite the fact that submissions to the 2015 inquiry into citizenship tests undertaken by this government show strong community support for this sort of response. Why, therefore, is Labor once again just opposing? It is increasingly obvious that the answer is because of the almost total capitulation of the Australian Labor Party to the socialist left. For example, when the proposal for a more realistic language test was introduced and a longer period before an immigrant could seek Australian citizenship was proposed back in April, the opposition leader actually supported the thrust of it. And he said this, and I quote, "I think it is reasonable to look for English language proficiency, and I think it is reasonable to have some period of time before you can become an Australian citizen." That was April, Deputy Speaker. That was just April. Now he's backflipped. Backflipped because he has so outraged the left, the socialist left of his own party, and they have brought him very meekly back into line. The member for Watson, from whom we just heard, a former Minister for Immigration and Border Protection no less, and a card-carrying lefty too, of course, has said in the past, quote, "We need stricter English language requirements. We need stricter English language requirements." That was the member for Watson in 2006. 2006, Deputy Speaker. In the same year, which was when the Howard government was considering toughening up some of the citizenship requirements, he said that nobody who is not prepared to sign a declaration to respect our laws, our way of life, should be allowed into the country. John Howard at the time promoted the importance of English for new immigrants, and the member for Watson acknowledged that John Howard was spot on, he said. Spot on. Spot on in 2006, Deputy Speaker, but not today. Not today, apparently. It seems these leopards of Watson and Maribyrnong have changed their spots yet again, because that's what's been ordered by the ringmasters of Labor's caucus circus, the socialist left. And so to the left they creep. As Troy Bramston, the former Labor insider and now offered commentator on the ALP, recently observed, that the left is now running the Labor Party both organisationally and in this parliament, because Labor members are at the beck and call of the organisation and the left now dominates. So the measures that the members for Maribyrnong and Watson so strongly supported just a few years ago are now, to use their words, snobbery, because that's the word they've been instructed to use. The Labor Party's failure to comprehend or honestly represent the way the English test works is irresponsible. Let me explain it to them yet again, Deputy Speaker. In simple terms, there are two distinctly separate strains of the testing system. Now, that should be hard to comprehend. There is a separate testing system for those applicants who wish to study here in Australia, and then another separate strain for the wider immigration program. So one for an academic stream and one for general applicants. The levels of proficiency required under these two streams are different and fit for purpose. there are degrees of capability registered by the testing authorities on a scale of 1 to 9. For the proposed English test does indeed require proficiency to level 6 for both tests, but they're very different sets of tests themselves. In other words, the general stream test is far less onerous, and this is where the Labor Party are being irresponsible and creating fear among the very people who are trying to master the English language enough to pass level 6. Not level 9, level 6. Labor simply says that because we want would-be citizens to achieve level 6, we are measuring them against university-level regimes. That's not what's being proposed. That is why we have that second general stream. Now, that second stream does require at least, Deputy Speaker, a basic understanding of the language, an ability to understand it when they're spoken to, an ability to be orally responsive to other people in a way that is understandable to the listener. And if there are some errors, mispronunciations, etc., that might even make understanding them a bit difficult, and to write it at a basic level. There is no problem with people struggling with a language, Deputy Speaker, including English, but it's in their vested interest for them to integrate, for their families to be part of our society, for them to have a degree of proficiency that allows that to happen. An ability to read, for example, encompasses such things as a train or bus timetable, to be able to get around, or to read a tabloid newspaper, a popular magazine, to help them develop an understanding of how Australians tick. Nothing outrageous or unreasonable. What's required is simply and sensibly a clear indication that a person has enough proficiency in the language to get by. In a society where the principal language, both spoken and used as written form of communication, is in fact, wait for it, English. Another equally spurious, equally hypocritical position being adopted by the Labor Party in relation to this bill is a demand for a longer period of residency before citizenship. They wish to make that shorter. Again, you just have to consider what the members for Maribyrnong and Watson especially as the principal Labor spokesperson in this area, have said in the past. Once again, there are blatant contradictions. Perhaps they used to think for themselves, Deputy Speaker, before surrendering to the tight leash from the left. Or have these multiple backflips meant that the Labor Party has genuinely lost its way and it wishes to totally rebrand as a pico-socialist left party? To the members for Watson and Maribyrnong, to the future members who are going to be standing in this House, to the Labor speakers who will speak after me, I ask them a few questions, Deputy Speaker. If they do not wish for new Australian citizens to speak proficient English, what language do they wish for them to speak? If the Labor Party does not want new citizens to sign up to Australian values, to what other countries' values do they wish new citizens to sign up to? If the Labor Party does not want new citizens to pledge allegiance to the nation of Australia, then to what nation do they wish allegiance to be pledged to? Australia is bound by a common set of values, and we need to ensure that those values are upheld and respected, just as we must ensure is the rule of law. What is being proposed in this bill strengthens the citizenship test for Australia and therefore strengthens the very values that bind us as a nation. And if the Labor Party wishes to keep sliding to the left and reject it, then it only serves to weaken the country and the very people they purport to represent.
Thank the member for Fairfax.